Welcome back. My silence-inducing presence. Something absolutely extraordinary just occurred that has everyone experiencing profound verbal paralysis the moment someone mentioned your name in any gathering. Entire conversation spontaneously ceased as participants became unwilling to speak first after your identification, creating mysterious phenomenon where mere mention of your name triggers collective hesitation, making groups fall silent, not from fear of you, but from fear of speaking before others, creating strategic standoff where everyone waits for someone else to initiate discussion. This wasn't people stopping conversation because your presence intimidated them into silence. This was groups becoming paralyzed by social calculation after hearing your name, where each person recognizes that speaking first carries risks, making them prefer waiting for others to commit first, creating deadlock where universal hesitation produces silence. Because nobody wants the vulnerability of being initial speaker, creating recognition that your name itself has become social hazard that triggers strategic silence. The architects have been monitoring name power and speech inhibition phenomena across civilizations for eons, and they've identified what you created as name mention commitment paralysis, when someone's reputation creates situation where discussing them carries social risks. Mere mention of their name triggers strategic hesitation, where participants become unwilling to speak first because initial position exposes vulnerability, making everyone prefer waiting for others to commit before revealing their own stance. Most names are neutral. Mentioning people doesn't create speaking hesitation, making their identification socially safe, allowing normal conversation flow to continue. But your name apparently achieved hazard status. Mention, triggering universal hesitation, proves discussing you carries perceived risks, where speaking first about you exposes vulnerabilities that later speakers avoid, making participants strategically wait for others to reveal positions first, creating collective paralysis where everyone's simultaneous hesitation produces silence because universal caution about committing first creates deadlock that can only break when someone accepts vulnerability of initial speech. Watch what's happening as observers process speaking paralysis. They experience commitment fear, recognizing that speaking first about you exposes their position before knowing others' stances, creates anxiety, making initial speech seem strategically dangerous versus safe option of waiting for others. Some observers are experiencing strategic calculation. Their hesitation reflects conscious assessment that speaking first carries disadvantages, making silence rational choice until someone else commits to position first, revealing safe direction. Others are experiencing instinctive caution. Their unwillingness to speak occurs automatically without conscious strategy, proving your name triggers unconscious hesitation that operates below deliberate calculation. The truly remarkable element is the universality. Everyone becoming unwilling to speak first simultaneously creates complete deadlock, proving your name affects all participants, equally, making silence emerge from collective strategic hesitation rather than from individual decisions. Once your name was noted, no one wanted to speak first, through demonstrating that name mention commitment paralysis creates strategic silence, where discussing someone whose reputation carries social risks triggers universal hesitation, making participants unwilling to expose themselves through initial speech, preferring to wait for others to reveal positions first, creating deadlock where simultaneous caution produces collective silence. Now the architects are analyzing what creates name mention commitment paralysis, and they're identifying what they call reputation hazard strategic exposure, when someone's reputation creates situation where discussing them incorrectly carries consequences. Participants recognize that speaking first maximizes exposure risk because initial positions get scrutinized, most making first speaker bear disproportionate vulnerability compared to later contributors who can calibrate responses based on reactions to initial speech. Most discussions are low stakes, mentioning people carries minimal risk, making speaking order irrelevant because incorrect statements produce negligible consequences. But discussing you, apparently, involves high stakes. Your reputation creates situation where mischaracterizing you or taking wrong stance carries social consequences, making speaking first strategically dangerous because initial position gets maximum scrutiny while bearing maximum uncertainty about appropriate stance, creating disproportionate vulnerability that rational actors avoid through strategic silence, waiting for others to expose themselves first. Consider what strategic exposure reveals about speaking vulnerability. First speakers bear maximum risk. Initial positions receive greatest scrutiny while having least information about appropriate stances, making first speech disproportionately vulnerable compared to later contributions that calibrate based on reactions. Watch what reputation hazard creates in speaking strategy. Participants delay commitment, recognizing that first speech carries disproportionate risk, makes everyone prefer waiting for others to reveal positions first, allowing calibration based on observed reactions before committing themselves. Some studying strategic communication recognize that speaking order matters. Game theory shows that sequential revelation creates information asymmetries, making your commitment paralysis potentially reflect rational strategic behavior, where first speakers face disadvantages, others exploring vulnerability dynamics. Note that exposure varies by position. Social psychology shows that initial speakers receive disproportionate attention, making first speech about risky topics strategically dangerous compared to later contributions. A few from organizational behavior recognize that speaking order indicates power, meeting dynamics, show that subordinates wait for superiors to speak first, making universal hesitation about discussing you, potentially reflect power recognition where everyone treats your topic as superior prerogative. Some experiencing strategic hesitation recognize rationality. Their unwillingness to speak first reflects conscious calculation that initial position carries disproportionate risk, making silence rational strategy until others expose themselves. Others experiencing instinctive caution lack conscious strategy. Their automatic hesitation occurs without deliberate calculation, proving your name triggers unconscious risk assessment that produces strategic silence automatically. A few questioning whether risks are real, wondering if speaking first about you actually carries consequences versus imagined dangers, making hesitation potentially reflect perceived rather than actual hazards. The architects observe that reputation hazard, strategic exposure is what created speaking paralysis. Discussing you carries risks where first speech maximizes vulnerability. Most topics are low stakes. Yours involves high stakes, and recognizing that speaking first about you exposes maximum vulnerability because initial positions receive greatest scrutiny, while bearing most uncertainty makes rational participants prefer strategic silence, waiting for others to commit first, allowing calibration based on reactions before revealing their own stances, creating universal hesitation where everyone's simultaneous caution about first speech exposure produces collective deadlock, making your name itself trigger strategic paralysis through reputation creating situation where discussing you incorrectly carries social consequences, making speaking order strategically significant. Something powerful is spreading among observers. Now, what the architects call first speaker vulnerability recognition, participants experiencing hesitation to speak are discovering that initial positions in high-stakes discussions carry disproportionate risks, creating awareness that speaking order itself constitutes strategic variable where sequential positioning matters as much as content quality. Most people think content matters most. They assume what you say determines outcomes, making speaking order seem irrelevant compared to statement quality. But your name-induced paralysis revealed order significance, discovering that nobody wants first position proves speaking sequence itself affects vulnerability, making when you speak matter as much as what you say, creating recognition that sequential dynamics create strategic advantages for later speakers who benefit from information asymmetries that first speakers lack, making speaking order itself strategic consideration, requiring careful navigation. Watch what vulnerability recognition creates in speaking strategy. Participants calculate positioning, recognizing that speaking order affects exposure, makes them strategically consider when to speak, not just what to say, making sequential positioning conscious strategic variable. Some studying communication dynamics recognize that timing matters. Research on sequential communication shows that position in sequence affects outcomes, making your paralysis induction potentially demonstrate documented principle about speaking order significance. Others exploring information asymmetries note that later speakers have advantages. Game theory shows that sequential revelation creates unequal information, making strategic delay rational when early positions carry disadvantages. A few from negotiation theory recognize that commitment order matters. Bargaining research shows that revealing positions first creates disadvantages, making your speaking paralysis potentially reflect negotiation dynamics where participants avoid first commitment. Some experiencing vulnerability awareness become strategic, recognizing that first speech carries disproportionate risk, makes them consciously calculate optimal speaking position, attempting to avoid initial vulnerability. Others experiencing paralysis, frustration, resent dynamics, understanding that strategic considerations prevent them from speaking freely, creates resentment about social dynamics that make simple discussion strategically complex. A few questioning whether advantages are real, wondering if later speakers actually benefit or if perceived advantages create unnecessary hesitation, making strategic delay potentially counterproductive when imagined benefits don't materialize. Some celebrating strategic awareness feel sophisticated, recognizing speaking order as strategic variable makes them appreciate communication complexity that naive speakers ignore, making vulnerability recognition mark of social intelligence. The architects observe that first speaker vulnerability recognition reveals that your name mention taught about sequential dynamics, speaking order affects exposure levels. Most think content matters most. Your paralysis revealed order significance, and discovering that participants avoid first position because initial speech carries disproportionate vulnerability proves speaking sequence itself constitutes strategic variable, where when you speak matters as much as what you say, creating recognition that sequential positioning in high-stakes discussions requires strategic navigation because later speakers benefit from information asymmetries that first contributors lack, making speaking order conscious consideration, requiring careful calculation about optimal positioning in conversation sequence, rather than just focusing on statement content. Making your name mention reveal that communication involves strategic timing dimensions that naive participants overlook through assuming content alone determines outcomes, when actually sequential positioning significantly affects vulnerability levels. Now the architects are revealing what silence deadlock actually demonstrates. Observers are experiencing what they call collective caution coordination failure, where universal strategic hesitation creates situation where rational individual decisions produce collectively suboptimal outcomes, proving that personal rationality can generate group dysfunction when everyone's simultaneous caution prevents achieving outcomes. that collective action could accomplish. Most coordination problems involve disagreement. Groups fail to act because participants want different things, making dysfunction result from conflicting preferences. But your speaking paralysis revealed agreement dysfunction, everyone wanting same thing yet failing to achieve it because universal strategic caution prevents anyone from acting. First proves that shared preferences don't guarantee coordination when individual rationality about exposure risks creates collective paralysis, making recognition that groups can fail even when members agree because strategic considerations about who acts first can prevent anyone from acting, creating coordination failure from excessive caution rather than from conflicting goals. Consider what coordination failure reveals about collective action. Agreement doesn't guarantee success. Groups sharing preferences can still fail when strategic considerations about positioning prevent anyone from initiating action, making collective dysfunction possible even with shared goals. Watch what collective caution creates in group outcomes. Deadlock produces suboptimal results. Everyone's rational hesitation creates collective paralysis where group achieves nothing despite all members wanting discussion to proceed, making individual rationality produce group dysfunction. Some studying collective action problems recognize that coordination can fail despite agreement. Research on social dilemmas shows that rational individual choices can produce collectively bad outcomes, making your speaking paralysis potentially demonstrate documented coordination failure mechanism. Others exploring game theory note that equilibrium can be inefficient. Economic analysis shows that rational strategies can produce suboptimal group outcomes, making your deadlock potentially reflect inefficient equilibrium, where individual rationality creates collective dysfunction. A few from organizational behavior recognize that caution can paralyze management. Research shows that excessive risk avoidance prevents necessary action, making your speaking paralysis potentially demonstrate how organizational caution creates dysfunction. Some experiencing coordination failure feel frustrated, recognizing that everyone wants discussion to proceed, yet nobody will speak first, creates frustration about collective inability to achieve shared goal through excessive individual caution. Others attempting coordination solution discover difficulty trying to break deadlock by encouraging others to speak first, proves ineffective because everyone maintains a strategic hesitation, making coordination failure resistant to simple solutions. A few questioning whether failure is true problem, wondering if silence itself might be appropriate response when discussion carries risks, making what seems like dysfunction potentially reflect collective wisdom about avoiding dangerous topics. The architects observe that collective caution coordination failure reveals that your name mention created agreement dysfunction, shared preferences failed to produce action. Most failures involve disagreement. Your paralysis reflected excessive caution, and discovering that universal strategic hesitation creates situation where everyone wants discussion, yet nobody will speak first, proves individual rationality can generate collective dysfunction when strategic considerations about exposure risks prevent anyone from acting, creating coordination failure where group achieves nothing despite members agreeing on desired outcome, making recognition that collective action problems can arise not just from conflicting preferences but from excessive individual caution about positioning, creating paralysis where rational personal decisions produce collectively suboptimal results. The architects are now analyzing power dimension of speaking paralysis. You apparently created what they call name power conversation control, where your reputation creates situation where mere mention controls discussion dynamics, granting influence over conversations. You're not even participating in making your name itself wield power that presence alone cannot achieve. Most influence requires participation. People control discussions by actively engaging, making their power depend on direct involvement in conversations, but your name apparently wields independent power, controlling discussion dynamics. Without your participation proves your reputation itself exercises influence, making your name autonomous force that shapes conversations independent of whether you're present, creating recognition that ultimate power operates through reputation alone, where your name controls dynamics of discussions. You're not in making influence transcend direct participation. Watch what name power creates in conversation control. Your influence operates remotely. Discussion dynamics change when your name gets mentioned, even when you're absent, proving reputation itself wields power independent of direct participation. Some studying power sources recognize that reputation does create the independent influence. Political theory shows that reputations themselves exercise power, making your conversation control potentially demonstrate how names acquire autonomous influence. Others exploring absent influence note that discussed parties affect discussions. Communication research shows that conversation topics shape dynamics, making your name power potentially reflect principle where discussed entities influence discussions about them. A few from symbolic power recognize that representations wield influence. Cultural theory shows that symbols exercise power independent of reference, making your name potentially function as powerful symbol that controls dynamics regardless of your actual presence. Some experiencing name power feel controlled, recognizing that your name shapes discussion dynamics. When you're absent, creates awareness that your influence extends beyond direct participation, making them feel your power operating remotely. Others celebrating reputation power feel validated, having built reputation that controls discussions, even in absence, creates satisfaction from achieving influence level where name alone wields power independent of participation. A few questioning whether control is intentional, wondering if your name's conversation control reflects deliberate reputation building versus unintended consequence, making distinction between strategic name power and accidental influence difficult to determine. Some experiencing conversation constraint resent name power, finding that discussions about you become paralyzed creates resentment about your influence, limiting free conversation, making name power feel like imposed constraint on communication freedom. The architects observe that name power, conversation control, reveals that your reputation wields autonomous influence. Mere mention controls discussion dynamics. Most power requires participation. Your name exercises independent influence, and discovering that your reputation creates situation where discussions about you become paralyzed even when you're absent, proves your name itself wields power that transcends direct participation, making recognition that ultimate influence operates through reputation alone, where your name controls conversation dynamics, independent of whether you're present, creating power form that exceeds what active participation achieves because reputation itself exercises autonomous influence, shaping discussions. You're not in making your name independent force that controls communication dynamics, proving that most sophisticated power operates through reputation building, where name alone wields influence, making direct participation unnecessary for exercising control over discussions, creating recognition that your reputation has achieved autonomous power status, where mention alone controls dynamics. Now something's emerging that the architects call silence-breaking power demonstration. Observers, watching who finally speaks first, are discovering that breaking paralysis demonstrates courage or authority, creating recognition that initial speech after your name mention functions as power display, where willingness to accept First speaker vulnerability signals confidence or status. Most speaking order seems arbitrary. People assume who talks first doesn't signal anything, making initial speech appear random rather than meaningful indicator. But your paralysis creation revealed speaking significance, discovering that breaking deadlock requires accepting vulnerability. Makes first speech after your name mention function as demonstration where willingness to speak first signals either exceptional courage to accept exposure or sufficient authority that vulnerability doesn't threaten, making silence, breaking itself, communicate power or confidence that hesitant participants lack, creating recognition that in high-stakes situations, speaking order itself communicates status, where initial speakers demonstrate qualities that cautious participants don't possess. Watch what silence breaking creates in status signaling. First speakers demonstrate confidence, willingness to accept vulnerability, signals either courage or authority, making initial speech function as power display that communicates superior qualities. Some studying status signaling recognize that risk-taking demonstrates power. Research shows that accepting vulnerabilities others avoid signals confidence, making your silence breaking potentially function as effective status display. Others exploring courage displays note that danger acceptance communicates strength. Behavioral research shows that willingness to face risks. Others fear demonstrates superior qualities, making first speech after your name mention potentially signal exceptional attributes. A few from leadership theory recognize that initiative taking indicates authority. Organizational research shows that acting first when others hesitate demonstrates leadership, making silence breaking potentially communicate superior status through accepting vulnerability. Some breaking silence first feel empowered, recognizing their willingness to speak first demonstrates qualities others lack, create satisfaction from displaying courage or authority through accepting vulnerability that hesitant participants avoid. Others observing silence breaking recognize demonstrators' power. Watching who speaks first after your name mention reveals who possesses sufficient confidence or authority to accept vulnerability, making initial speaker's identity itself informative about status hierarchy. A few questioning whether speaking first is wise, wondering if silence breaking demonstrates courage versus foolhardiness, making distinction between admirable confidence and reckless exposure difficult to determine. When risks are real, some remaining silent feel validated. Observing that first speakers face scrutiny confirms their caution was wise, making strategic hesitation seem intelligent rather than cowardly. When early speakers bear predicted vulnerabilities, the architects observe that silence-breaking power demonstration reveals that speaking first after your name mention signals status. Initial speech demonstrates confidence or authority. Most speaking order seems arbitrary. Your paralysis creation made it meaningful, and discovering that breaking deadlock requires accepting vulnerability makes first speech function as power display, where willingness to speak first signals exceptional qualities, creating recognition that in situations where your name creates strategic hesitation, speaking order itself communicates status, where initial speakers demonstrate courage or authority that cautious participants lack, making silence breaking reveal hierarchy through showing who possesses sufficient confidence to accept exposure, making your name's paralysis-inducing power create situation where speaking order becomes status indicator, revealing power relationships through who's willing to speak first.